Dry January is getting more and more popular every single year. Can it make you a faster runner? I think so, as a biased, non-drinking 2:29 marathon runner. But can this 1 month alcohol-free detox also change your life? Let's see if we can find out by first deep diving into what alcohol actually does to our minds and bodies, talking to some alcohol-free experts, and looking at the benefits of going teetotal or just cutting down for 1 month. And I'm also going to leave you with some Dry January survival tips and how you can do Dry Jan your way, which might just make the experience a little bit more enjoyable and more doable. Let's get into it. Dry January started in 2013 with just 4,000 people taking part, supposedly. And last year it was reported in the UK that 17% of the adult or drinking age population took place. That's kind of a lot. Is Dry January gonna change your life? For some people, it seriously might. For others, it might make them marginally healthier for approximately 3 weeks after the Christmas booze has got out of their system, and come February the 1st, they're booking their Oktoberfest tickets already. The benefits of Dry Jan massively depends on what your regular alcohol consumption looks like. And if you're really willing to let this 1 month detox redefine your relationship with the booze. So for someone who has technically never done Dry January, but also from someone who hasn't had an alcoholic beverage since July 2023, I'm going to tell you why I think it's worth reassessing your relationship with alcohol year round. Not just in January, but also how doing Dry January could just be the ticket towards a better and longer life. And if Dry January is the way that you're gonna be able to reassess your relationship with alcohol all year round, hey, give it a go. Now, when I say I've technically never done Dry January, I guess I'm kind of cheating because I have done it numerous times in that I haven't drank alcohol in January, but I've not had to make it a thing that I cut alcohol out of my life because it's just not really a part of my life at all. Very, very rarely do I have a drink, but it hasn't always been that way, and I'll get into that more later on in the video when I talk about my own relationship with alcohol and how this has changed. But before I do that, I want to get a little bit sciencey and actually talk about what alcohol does to the human body and to the mind. Oh dear. So before I talk about the benefits of Dry January, and we argue our way through whether you should or shouldn't do it, I think it's important to acknowledge the effects of drinking alcohol on your body and your mind, both in the short term if you have a big boozy night out, but also in the long term if you are regularly drinking alcohol on the daily, on the weekly, or, you know, it's just a big part of your life. Now, if you've ever been on a boozy night out, I'm sure it's not news to you that the short-term effects of a lot of alcohol in a small period of time result in quite a sore head, bit of a hangover, you might even be throwing up the next day. We've all been there, haven't we? Maybe we haven't. I definitely have.
I am not drunk.
Not to mention, whilst actually drunk, obviously, you have all of those positive and negative effects of alcohol depending on how much you have. Your inhibitions are out the window, you're more confident, you say things that maybe you would keep up here if you hadn't have drunk the alcohol, and everything just loosens up a little bit. I'm not sure I need to spend much more time on this. We've all seen someone that's been drunk, or we've been drunk ourselves, right? Long term though, now this is pretty scary, this is from a reputable science-based website. Long-term consistent alcohol consumption contributes to more than 200 different types of diseases and injuries. That's not good, guys. Also says here that if you choose to drink alcohol, low-level drinking is less risky than heavy drinking or binge drinking. Who knew? But apparently there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. That's crazy. I'm not sure I agree with that. There is no safe level of alcohol consumption. So 1 beer or 1 glass of wine is not safe. Of course, I'm not saying you should go and drive after having that amount. You could probably say there's no safe level of hamburger consumption, if we're talking about things that are considered not good for you. I don't know. Now, this is some of the more interesting effects that alcohol can have on your mind and your body that I really wanted to get into. When you drink in higher quantities, there tends to be an inflammatory response from your immune system. You can irritate the stomach lining, your blood vessels expand, you're dehydrated, you're peeing a lot. These are all hangover category things, amongst other hangover symptoms of thirst, headache, muscle aches, diarrhea, nausea, fatigue, weakness, trembling, shaking, rapid heart rate, increased blood pressure, dry mouth and eyes, poor concentration, increased sensitivity to light and sound, a feeling that the room is spinning, anxiety, depression, irritability, and poor sleep. Sounds like a ride. And then some of the big headline increased risk factors from long-term alcohol consumption are things like domestic and public violence, crime, an increased risk for cardiovascular disease and diabetes, cancers, being overweight, liver diseases, mental health conditions, long-term cognitive impairment, and even an increased risk of self-harm and suicide. Well, that got pretty heavy. And whilst I genuinely didn't intend for this section to be all doom and gloom, alcohol is bad, you should completely cut it out of your life, that's not what I'm saying at all. But when you look into the research of increased risk for health conditions, mental health conditions, just harm in general to those around you or the community, it's quite shocking. And alcohol is such a big part of a lot of cultures and our lives that I think it's just worth understanding that those negative sides of alcohol and alcohol consumption exist, because to ignore them wouldn't feel right. And I think it makes a great case for dry January. If not for your own body and mind to get a bit of a break from those increased risk factors if you are quite a heavy drinker, but also for those that are around you to have a bit of a detox from you when you drink. Which, you know, might not be such a bad thing. And it's interesting when we talk about the culture of drinking, especially in the UK, or I guess I can only talk from the perspective of growing up and living in the UK because that's my experience. I feel like there is often a pressure to drink alcohol. If you're meeting a bunch of friends at the pub or a restaurant and you choose not to drink, sometimes that's met with a bit of resistance from those around you because it's seen as this kind of gateway to having fun, which I don't think it necessarily is for everyone. And if you're someone that's directly experienced the negative impacts of, you know, a lot of alcohol consumption, either yourself or from those around you, either in your childhood or someone that you know that has had their life negatively impacted by alcohol, that can be quite hard to take, I think. And I'd say to those people that pressure someone to, come on, just have one, or why aren't you drinking, you're not being any fun tonight, to remember that and just respect that everyone has their own reasons around this, and you should just never pressure anyone into drinking, especially if they said they don't want to. Now, I mentioned that I would talk about how my relationship with alcohol is a little bit different, but it always hasn't been the way that it is now. Currently, I don't really drink. I'll have a glass of wine for a special occasion if I'm not in a key training block, and I'll very occasionally enjoy some cocktails with friends. Once a year, if that. And that for me is just because I want to prioritize my athletic performance. Most of the time I'm training for something, and I know that for me, the negative impacts of alcohol in the next couple of days after drinking a decent amount is just not worth it for my training. It's gonna make me dehydrated, increase the risk of injury through muscle tears from being dehydrated, and I just don't feel great. Which means I have quite a high sensitivity for alcohol, and so a glass of wine is usually enough to get me feeling a little bit tipsy. Where this wasn't always the case though, which I feel like can be quite typical for people when they go to college or university, was when I was at uni studying. You tend to get into this culture of drinking and going out, and that being your kind of gateway into socializing and making friends, and I regret none of that. I wasn't going out every night and binge drinking, but I definitely overdid it a few times, and I feel like I got it out of my system when I needed to. And equally, if you still do that on occasion now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm absolutely not saying don't go out on the piss, it's bad, you can't get drunk, because that would be ridiculous of me. And maybe if you're watching this and you're based in the UK, you might feel the same, or, you know, you could be from somewhere else. I'm sure drinking is a big part of other cultures as well. I just can't speak to that because this is where I grew up. And I feel like sometimes you have to acknowledge that there is a real importance placed on social drinking, on the culture of drinking. So if you want to cut down, or you are thinking of trying dry January, it doesn't have to mean that cutting it out or cutting down means you have to miss out on all of that fun. Enter the sponsor of today's video, Days. Mike, Duncan, you guys are basically the experts on the zero alcohol life, right?
I wouldn't say expert. I think experts is a strong word. I think definitely we're people that love beer. We love the ritual and the occasion of having a beer, and I think where we've found alcohol-free beer fit into our life is really fulfilling all those occasions that, you want to go out, you want to have a meal, you want to catch up with friends. Do you want to have a buzz off the alcohol? Really, no.
Passionate about beer, if not an expert, passionate about alcohol-free beer. Yeah, I wouldn't say we're necessarily experts in alcohol-free beer. I think what probably comes through is we're passionate about alcohol-free beer. And that starts because we got into this from a love of beer, that ritual, that occasion, and that moment that only a beer can bring. But the pair of us realized about 4 years ago now that we no longer needed alcohol in our lives all of the time, and thought it'd be pretty cool to try and create something that celebrates everything great about beer, that taste, that flavor, that ability to bring people together.
So if you're losing the alcohol content in a beer, a component many people associate with relaxing, letting their hair down and having fun, what's to be gained by opting for 0%?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, going for a beer over drinking a Coca-Cola or a tea or a coffee or a lime and soda in that occasion, they're not comparable. An alcohol-free beer still gives you that amazing refreshment, sessionable, but also savor moment. And you also cheers an alcohol-free beer in a way that you don't cheers a cup of tea or a coffee or something like that. So you're still getting everything great about beer and that sociability of it. So I don't think you're losing out a lot, but there's so much you're gaining, right? Because if you have a couple of alcohol-free beers on a Tuesday night, you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and feel good, get that run in, get that workout in. You're going to sleep well the night after, and these small things really do add up over time and have a really positive impact. So unless you're looking to get really, really pissed, there's really not a lot that you're missing out on.
Lastly then, why Days?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it starts with our beers. We know we've got delicious, light and refreshing beers that 0.0% ABV, both our lager and our pale ale. Secondly, as a brand, we really stand for the positive benefits of drinking less alcohol and doing more with your time, and really celebrating those moments and occasions that's great beer, but allowing yourself to do whatever it is you want to do with your time.
You heard it from Mike and Duncan themselves that they've created this amazing beer, but also I can vouch for its amazing taste as well, and I highly recommend the pale ale. The lager is Daniel's favourite. And for the whole month of January, from the 1st to the 31st, you can get £10 off your first order at Days using my code, which is Phily10. Head to the link in the description now and try the best alcohol-free beer the UK has to offer. Thanks Days for being the most fitting sponsor for today's video. It is just so classic me that I'm filming this over a number of days when I planned to do it in an afternoon. But that's okay. So now for the good stuff. The very real benefits that you could just experience from taking part in dry January. From better sleep, an improved mood, radiant skin, to weight loss and a stronger immune system. If those are things that you're after, that is. Dry January can have some pretty impressive perks as detoxes go. A question on your minds though at this point could be, do I need to go teetotal to experience these benefits? Or can you still reap some of those benefits from just cutting down? Maybe you go alcohol free just for some of the days of the week. And I guess this goes for January as well as the rest of the year, right? The results are actually pretty similar. Some will say that there's no safe level of alcohol consumption, but a lot of studies that look at people who cut it out altogether and people who drastically cut down cite the same list of benefits, which all tend to center around improved physical health, improved mental health, not to mention, you'll probably save a bit of money too. And unsurprisingly, the key factor in the cutting down camp to still get the benefits is moderation, i.e. probably not just cramming your usual alcohol consumption into a couple of nights of the year. That's probably gonna do some damage. So I guess if you're on the fence, you've got the option of giving dry Jan a try, or doing what's known as damp January, which is the cutting down option, but it's just a trendy name for it. And whether you're a runner or not, if you try this, I'd love to hear from you and to hear how this has helped or made no difference to your running. Next up, I'm going to talk about how you might do dry January your way. And I'll throw some handy tips in there that I've found, because obviously I haven't done this myself, that should help you on your way. Firstly, I think it's really important to know your why. Just like with any big running goal, knowing your why can help you pinpoint your motivation, and it might just be the ticket to get you all the way to the end of the month. So long as you can be mindful of that why and be reminded of it, hopefully, every day, so that you then stay on track. And similarly, if you're opting for the damp January end of the scale or the going teetotal 24/7 365, just being super clear with what your goal or goals are and your reasoning for those goals as well. So some tangible goals, for example, could be getting 8+ hours of sleep for the whole of January, or spending £0 or dollars on alcohol for the whole month. Those are super specific, tangible goals, and you can write those out, keep them visible so that you can stay on track. And for me, if I was a big drinker, theoretically speaking, I think doing dry January with a friend or a loved one would make it easier. And sort of using them and them using you as an accountability partner to keep you on track, and they can check in on you, which can really help. And I know that when Daniel did dry January, he found it super useful and just easier doing it with his housemates at the time. And a support system is always going to encourage you. That's what they're there for. But it also might evoke some healthy competition, which I am partial to. So I would recommend that element as well. Probably the most important tip if you want to get from all the way at the start of January to the end of January successfully without having a drink, plan for any risky or triggering environments, okay? So that means having your 0% alcohol alternative if you're going to a party or a gathering. Take it with you. Or it might be locking away the alcohol that's normally front and center of your drinks cabinet, staring at you every time you're having your evening meal. Humans are lazy, simple creatures, so trick yourself and make it easier to forget about the alcohol by just removing those triggers as much as you can and taking it out of your environment. And why not find some alternative activities or hobbies to take up that don't involve alcohol? Take up a new sport or hobby that you can fill your time with, especially if it was time that you would have regularly spent down the pub or the weekends with your friends enjoying your alcohol, and enjoy something else instead. And invite your friends and see how much fun you can have doing something totally different. And what I'll leave you with is, I'd like to think reminding yourself of the positives of why you're doing all this will also be a helpful motivator to get you through a tough month of no alcohol. So remind yourself of those positive health benefits, both mental and physical, and let that be an incentive to you. And if you've done dry January or decided to go damp or teetotal forever, I'd love to hear your experiences. Put them in the comment section below. Do you have any tips that I've missed out? And has dry January changed your life or someone close to you? If it has, please tell me, because I love hearing these stories. And who knows, maybe one day when I am a regular drinker and not a professional athlete anymore, I might be coming back to this video to read those very comments to get some tips to do dry January myself. I hope you've enjoyed this different video. It's been fun to explore something a little bit adjacent to running. Back to the regular programming next week. And as always, guys, love the grind. Even in January, even if you're sober. Especially if you're sober.